My brand new car vanished overnight. And when I begged my parents for help, they casually told me they had given my keys to my sister. Like my hard work meant nothing. Stay with me as I walk you through what happened. And if this story hits your heart, don't forget to support our channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing it with the people who matter to you. I'm Lakin Dorsey, 25 years old, the kind of girl who keeps her head down, works hard, and doesn't ask for much. I've always been quiet, more comfortable with routines than crowds. For 2 years, I juggled 2 jobs, one at a grocery store, one cleaning offices at night, just to buy myself something I'd never had before, a completely new car, a 2024 hatchback. My first real reward for all the hours I poured into my life. But in my family, my hard work has never really mattered. My parents, Ruthen and Garrett, have always saved their warmth, attention, and excuses for my younger sister, Alara. She's 22, outgoing, charming, and trouble follows her everywhere she goes. Yet no matter how deep she sinks, they always catch her before she hits the ground. That morning started like any other. I walked outside, still half asleep, expecting to see my car gleaming in the driveway. Instead, there was an empty space. For a moment, I actually thought I was looking at the wrong spot. I walked back and forth, checking again and again, my chest tightening with every step. The car was gone. My hands were shaking when I rushed back inside. My parents were sitting in the kitchen like nothing was wrong. I blurted out that my car had vanished, and instead of panicking or grabbing the phone, they just looked at each other calmly. "Oh, that," my mom said, waving her hand. "We let Alara take it last night. She needed to run some errands." I stared at them, not even sure I heard correctly. "You gave her my keys?" Without asking me. My dad shrugged like it was no big deal. "You're the older one, Lakin. You should be more understanding. Your sister's going through a lot right now." My stomach twisted. That car wasn't a toy. It wasn't a family gift. I bought it. I made every payment. And they handed it over like I didn't exist. Alara breezed into the house an hour later, smiling like she hadn't just turned my whole world upside down. When I asked where the car was, she simply laughed and said, "Relax. I'll bring it back later." But she didn't say where it was. She didn't apologize. She didn't even care. My parents told me to stop overreacting. The same word they always used whenever my feelings didn't match their expectations. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, I sat on my bed staring at my empty key ring. For the first time in a long time, something inside me shifted. I realized no one was going to protect what was mine except me. So I made a quiet promise to myself. If my family wasn't going to help me find my car, I'd find it on my own. Lakin spent the next morning walking from house to house, hoping someone had seen something. She felt embarrassed knocking on doors, but the empty driveway kept replaying in her mind. She had worked too hard to sit and wait for answers that her family refused to give her. Most neighbors shrugged or said they hadn't noticed anything unusual, and with every "sorry, can't help," her hopes sank a little lower. Then she reached Mrs. Hallbrook, the elderly widow who lived 2 houses down. She always sat by her window late into the night, watching the street like it was her own personal TV. When Lakin asked if she'd seen her car, the old woman nodded slowly. "Oh, sweetheart, yes. I saw your little blue car leaving around midnight," she said. "Your sister was driving, and there was a young man with her. Tall, dark hair, jacket with patches, didn't look familiar." The words hit Lakin like cold water. Midnight. A man she didn't know. Her car being driven around without her even knowing. She thanked the neighbor and walked home with her heart hammering, anger mixing with dread. Inside, she found Alara curled on the couch scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. Lakin asked, trying to keep her voice steady, "Who was the guy you were with last night? And where did you even take my car?" Alara didn't even look up. She just smirked. "Wow, you're really making this a thing? I borrowed it for a few hours. Stop acting like the world is ending." Lakin felt her face burn. "You could have told me. Or asked. And who was the man?" Alara rolled her eyes dramatically. "You're being dramatic. Seriously, calm down. It's a car." Before Lakin could respond, her parents entered the room, drawn by the tension. Her mother sighed loudly and crossed her arms. "Lakin, enough. You're older. Be responsible. Your sister needed help, and we didn't want to deal with your attitude." Her dad added, "You know how tough things have been for her. Don't make this harder." The message was clear. Alara mattered. Lakin didn't. Lakin stood there, feeling the familiar sting of being dismissed. But this time, something felt different. Her family kept treating the situation like a harmless loan. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized Alara never said when she'd return the car, or if she planned to return it at all. It wasn't borrowed. It was taken. So Lakin stopped arguing. Instead, she started paying attention. She replayed her conversations, watched Alara's behavior, and even checked the driveway each hour. She noticed Alara avoiding eye contact and her parents whispering in the kitchen. Every small detail felt like a puzzle piece falling into place. Late that afternoon, while sorting through her mail, she found something that made her heart drop, a bright orange parking ticket addressed to her car. The date and time were from the night before. And the location printed at the bottom? A run-down, dangerous part of town she had never driven to in her life. Her stomach twisted. Whatever was happening, it was much bigger than she thought. Lakin drove toward the address printed on the parking ticket with her hands tight around the steering wheel of her old backup car. The closer she got, the more uneasy she felt. The clean streets she was used to slowly faded into cracked sidewalks, flickering signs, and groups of people standing around with nothing good in their eyes. It wasn't a place she would ever visit by choice. She turned down the narrow side road listed on the ticket and spotted it. The familiar blue of her hatchback sitting crookedly behind a rundown bar with boarded-up windows and peeling paint. Her heart dropped. The car looked abandoned, like someone had tossed it aside once they were done using it. When she stepped out, her legs felt unsteady. She approached the car, hoping maybe things weren't as bad as they looked. But the moment she opened the driver's door, the truth hit her like a punch. A wave of cigarette smell rushed out, so strong it made her cough. Fast food wrappers were stuffed between the seats, an empty bottle rolling near the pedals. On the passenger side, the metal was scraped deeply, leaving a dent she had definitely never caused. Her chest tightened with frustration and something close to grief. She had taken such careful care of this car. It was supposed to be a symbol of her work, her independence. Seeing it like this felt like watching someone stomp on everything she had earned. As she stood there staring, a man leaning against the bar's doorway called out, "You the owner of that car?" Lakin hesitated, then nodded. He waved her over. "Your sister and that guy she's always with, they've been here a lot. They treat that car like it's some kind of party bus." Lakin's stomach twisted. "Do you know his name?" she asked quietly. The man shrugged. Riven Maddox. He's trouble. Owes people money. Folks around here don't like him much. I'm surprised that car survived this long." The name meant nothing to Lakin, but the way the man said it told her everything she needed to know. Alara wasn't just borrowing the car. She was letting some stranger with a bad reputation use it too. And if he had financial problems, who knew what kind of mess he was dragging her car, and her, into? Anger simmered in her chest, stronger than before. She didn't wait another second. She threw the trash out, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The car sputtered but came to life. She drove home with her jaw clenched, her mind racing with everything she had just learned. When she pulled into the driveway, she barely had time to step out before her parents stormed outside. Ruth then pointed at her like she'd committed a crime. "Lakin, how dare you take the car back without telling us?" Garrett added, furious. "You stole it from your sister. What were you thinking?" Lakin looked at them, exhausted and shaking, realizing this wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about a family that never chose her, no matter how much she tried. The moment Lakin stepped into the house, her parents were already waiting in the living room as if they'd rehearsed the scene. Ruthen stood with her hands on her hips, and Garrett paced back and forth, anger written all over his face. Lakin hadn't even spoken yet when her mother snapped. "You need to give the car back to your sister until she gets back on her feet. She needs it more than you." Lakin stared at her, stunned. "She trashed it. She's using it with strangers. It's my car. I paid for every part of it." Garrett shook his head like she wasn't listening. "Alara is going through a rough patch. She has job interviews, appointments, things she needs to take care of. You, on the other hand, already have everything under control. Stop being selfish." Selfish. The word echoed in Lakin's mind. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. She worked 2 jobs just to afford that car. Alara had crashed through life without consequences, and somehow she was the selfish one. Before she could answer, Alara came down the stairs dramatically wiping tears from her cheeks, even though her eyes were barely wet. "I can't believe you would do this to me," she cried. "I told everyone I had a car to use, and now you ruined that. You always want to make me look like a failure." Lakin almost choked. "You took my car without asking. You left it behind a bar. And what about Riven? Alara cut her off with louder sobs, collapsing onto the couch like her world had ended. See, she's attacking me again. I can't live like this. I needed help. You all said you'd support me. Ruthen rushed to her side, stroking her hair as if soothing a child. Sweetheart, it's okay. We'll fix this. Your sister is just upset. Lakin felt her pulse pounding in her ears. You're defending her when she put me in danger. When she lied. When she damaged my car. That was when her father delivered the blow she never expected. We already gave her the spare key, he said coldly. We trusted her to use the car responsibly. Lakin froze. You what? Without telling me. Her mother didn't even look ashamed. We knew you'd make a big deal out of it. Alara needed the key, and we didn't want to argue. In an instant, everything clicked. The late-night whispers, the strange tension when she walked into rooms, the way they had dismissed her concerns. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. They had planned it. Together. The room spun for a moment as the betrayal sank into her chest like a physical weight. She argued, shouted, cried. She didn't even remember all the words. But nothing she said mattered. Every time she spoke, her parents took Alara's side. Every time she tried to explain, they twisted her words. She was outnumbered, cornered, and completely alone in a house that was supposed to be her home. By the time night settled, the house was silent again. Lakin walked to the hallway closet where the lockbox sat. She opened it slowly, already knowing what she would find. The spare key was gone. Her family hadn't just chosen Alara. They had chosen to betray her. Before the sun was even up, Lakin stepped outside with a sinking feeling in her chest. She didn't know why she felt uneasy, until she looked at the driveway. The space where her car should have been was empty. Again, her breath caught. For a moment she thought maybe she was mistaken, maybe she'd parked on the street or further down. But no, she knew exactly where she left it. She ran a few steps forward, staring at the cold strip of concrete that held nothing but scattered tire marks. The tracks curved sharply, dirt kicked up as if someone had driven off fast, not caring who heard or saw. Her throat tightened. No, 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 she whispered, bending down to trace the marks with her fingers as if touching them could change what happened. Her parents appeared at the doorway, both wearing the same blank expression she'd seen too many times. Garrett frowned lightly, like a man pretending to be puzzled. What's going on out here? My car is gone. Lakin shouted without turning around. Ruthen gasped softly, but there was nothing real behind it. That's strange. I wonder where Alara went. She must have stepped out early. There it was. The lie dressed as innocence. The act they had perfected. Lakin stood up slowly. You knew she was going to take it. Her mother shook her head. We didn't say that. Don't assume things. But Alara was nowhere in sight. No note. No call. No sign. Just fresh tire marks and the faint smell of burned rubber. Something in Lakin finally cracked. She walked past her parents into the house, her vision blurring as tears finally surged forward. She had held it together for days, through the disrespect, the excuses, the manipulation. But now the weight was too much. She leaned against the kitchen counter and cried until her shoulders shook. Her parents hovered nearby, but offered nothing that resembled comfort. Instead, Garrett said quietly, Don't make this into a big issue. We're a family. Families handle things privately. Ruthen added, If you involve outsiders, there will be consequences for all of us. Think before you act. The warning tone might have scared her before. But not now. Something hardened inside her. These people weren't protecting the family. They were protecting their favorite child at her expense. Lakin wiped her face, grabbed her bag, and walked out the front door. She didn't even bother answering their calls behind her. She drove straight to the police station and filled out a report under her own name. She listed everything: the unauthorized use, the previous damage, the missing keys. When the officer asked if she wanted to leave out her sister's involvement, she said firmly, No. I want the full truth documented. Her parents' threats didn't matter anymore. She was done being quiet. Hours later, her phone rang. The number belonged to the officer she had spoken with earlier. Ms. Dorsey, he said, we've located your vehicle. It was towed to impound after being involved in a hit-and-run last night. Lakin closed her eyes, her heart sinking again, because she already knew who had been behind the wheel. Lakin arrived at the impound lot with her stomach in knots, the officer guiding her through rows of damaged vehicles. When they reached her car, her breath caught in her throat. It didn't even look like the same vehicle she had worked so hard to buy. The The front fender was smashed inward as if someone had rammed into a pole. The side mirror hung by a single wire, barely attached. Deep scratches ran along the doors, and the bumper was cracked open like it had been torn apart. She stood there in shock, feeling a strange mix of anger and grief. This wasn't just a car. It was her independence, her sacrifice, her late nights working double shifts. And someone she trusted, a member of her own family, had treated it like trash. The officer beside her cleared his throat gently. There's more you should know. The people involved didn't stay at the scene. Lakin's heart tightened. People. He crossed his arms. Your sister, Ilara, was identified as the driver. Witnesses say she ran after the collision. The man with her, Riven Maddox, was still there when we arrived. Lakin felt her breath stall. Where is he now? Released, the officer replied. He told us he had no idea the car wasn't hers. He said Ilara told him she owned it. The words cut deep, but they didn't surprise her. She could imagine Ilara laughing, brushing off questions, convincing yet another person to carry her chaos for her. But this time, there were real consequences. When Lakin returned home later that day, her parents were waiting in the living room, both looking more desperate than angry. Her mother rushed toward her. Lakin, listen. You need to drop the charges. Please. Her father nodded quickly. Your sister made a mistake. If you keep pushing this, her life will fall apart. You don't want that on your conscience. Lakin stared at them, feeling something cold settle inside her. She totaled my car. She left the scene of an accident. She lied to the police. And you expect me to pretend nothing happened. Ruth then clasped her hands together. You're stronger than she is. She can't handle this. Just let it go. For years, that line had worked. For years, Lakin had swallowed her hurt, softened her anger, and carried the weight of the family. But now, standing in the wreckage of everything she owned, something finally shifted. No, she said quietly but firmly. I'm not protecting her anymore. Her father's face hardened instantly. If you do this, don't expect this family to support you. Lakin almost laughed. They had never supported her. Not really. She walked away from them, ignoring their shouts behind her. For the first time in her life, she chose herself. Later that evening, an envelope arrived from her insurance company. She opened it and scanned the letter. Her stomach dropped. They were challenging her claim, due to potential fraud concerns involving other family members. The damage wasn't just to the car anymore. It was spreading into every part of her life. Lakin sat on her bed with a notebook open and her phone beside her, the weight of the insurance letter still pressing on her chest. If her family wanted to twist the truth, then she needed to protect herself with facts. For the first time, she didn't cry. She didn't break. She simply began writing. Every conversation. Every date. Each time the car had been taken. What the police told her. What the impound fees were. Every repair estimate she collected from the shop. She saved screenshots of messages, photographed the damage, and organized every piece of proof into folders. It felt strange, powerful, even to finally take control instead of waiting for someone else to do right by her. At work the next day, a coworker named Danny noticed how drained she looked. After hearing pieces of what was happening, Danny's expression hardened with outrage. Lakin, you don't have to handle this alone. My cousin is a lawyer. He's good. Talk to him. Lakin hesitated, but the alternative was letting her family keep steamrolling her life. So she agreed. That evening she met the lawyer, a calm, sharp-eyed man named Aiden Keller. After reviewing her documents and hearing the full story, Aiden leaned back and folded his hands. You have more than enough, he said. Your sister committed multiple offenses, and your parents knowingly enabled her, which gives you grounds for civil damages. You can file charges against all three. Hearing those words made Lakin's chest tighten, not in fear, but in relief. Someone finally believed her. Someone finally said she wasn't overreacting. But when she returned home later that night, her parents were waiting. They tried a different tactic this time. Soft voices, forced smiles, fake concern. Ruthan started first. Honey, let's not let this get out of hand. Families don't drag each other through courts. Garrett added, you're hurting us by doing this. You're tearing the family apart. And then the familiar guilt tripping. You're overreacting. You're supposed to be the mature one. You're going to ruin your sister's life. Lakin listened in silence, her face calm even when her heart beat wildly. She no longer argued. Arguing had never changed anything. Instead, she simply picked up her bag and said, I'm staying with a friend for a while. Her parents' shock was instant. "You're what?" But she didn't explain. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look back as she walked out. At Danny's house, away from the pressure and manipulation, her thoughts became clearer. She slept better. She ate without feeling sick. She felt like a different version of herself, one who didn't have to constantly brace for emotional attacks. Aiden continued guiding her, preparing paperwork step by step. But just as she began feeling steady, she received a message from him late one afternoon. "Lakin, I just heard something concerning. Your sister is preparing to file a report claiming the car was a shared family vehicle. She's trying to make it look like you're lying." Lakin sat still, the phone heavy in her hand. Alara wasn't just avoiding responsibility anymore. She was preparing to rewrite the story entirely and erase Lakin from her own truth. Lakin spent the next morning sitting at Danny's kitchen table with a stack of papers spread out in front of her. She double-checked every document, making sure nothing was missing. The car loan was in her name alone. Every bank transfer came from her personal account. The title listed only one owner, her. She printed duplicates, saved digital copies, and even photographed each page. If Alara wanted to lie, Lakin was going to prove the truth with cold, undeniable evidence. Aiden, her lawyer, encouraged her to gather more proof in case Alara tried anything else. So Lakin returned to the impound lot to pick up a few items she had forgotten inside the damaged car: her insurance binder, her warranty folder, and the packet the dealership gave her on the purchase day. But when she arrived, she froze. Alara was already there. She was standing beside the car, tugging on the glove box with sharp, desperate motions. Papers were scattered inside, some hanging halfway out. Lakin realized instantly what she was searching for: the registration, the proof of ownership, anything she could use to twist the story in her favor. Lakin stepped forward. "What do you think you're doing?" Alara jolted, then spun around with a glare. "None of your business," she snapped. "You don't deserve this car anyway." Lakin kept her voice steady. "You were trying to take my documents." Alara's expression shifted from surprise to fury. "You need to stop playing the victim. You're just a walking wallet, Lakin. That's all you've ever been." The words hit like a slap, but not the kind that stung. More like confirmation of something Lakin had been afraid to admit. Alara didn't see her as a sister. She saw her as a resource to drain. People nearby, other car owners, impound employees, turned to look at the commotion. The lot was public property. Lakin slowly pulled out her phone and pressed record, keeping it steady by her leg. Alara kept going, not realizing what was happening. "You were supposed to share. Mom and Dad said you'd hand it over eventually. You owe us. Everything you have came from them. This car should have been mine." Lakin didn't speak. She let Alara rant, letting every word bury her further. When Alara finally stopped, out of breath, Lakin lifted her phone and said quietly, "You're done." Alara's face drained of color. Later that day, Lakin showed Aiden the recording. He watched it twice, jaw tightening. "This is perfect," he said. "Between the video, the documents, and the earlier evidence, you have everything you need. She can't spin this anymore. You're going to win." For the first time in weeks, Lakin felt a breath of relief. But that calm didn't last long. That evening, her phone buzzed with a long message from a number she knew too well: her mother's. It was paragraph after paragraph accusing her of betraying the family, destroying her sister's life, choosing outsiders over her own blood, and being ungrateful for everything they had done for her. At the bottom, one final line: "Until you fix this, consider yourself cut off from us." Lakin stared at the message, her heart steady. For once, she didn't feel abandoned. She felt free. Lakin moved forward with the charges the moment Aiden finalized the paperwork. There was no hesitation left in her, only a steady determination that came from weeks of being pushed, ignored, and betrayed. The police had everything they needed: witness statements, evidence from the impound, the video of Alara admitting her intentions, and clear documentation proving the car belonged solely to Lakin. It was finally out of her hands and in the hands of the law. But finding Alara wasn't easy. She disappeared almost immediately after the confrontation at the impound. Weeks passed with no updates, only small clues from officers who were trying to track her down. Lakin tried not to think about it, focusing instead on work and rebuilding her life at Danny's place. Every day, she reminded herself that choosing to stand up didn't make her cruel. It made her free. Then one afternoon, her phone rang. "Ms. Dorsey, we've located your sister," the officer said. "She was arrested earlier today." Lakin sat down, feeling both lighter and heavier at the same time. The officer explained that Alara had been taken into custody for the hit-and-run, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and a list of related charges. Riven had already been interviewed, confirming Alara claimed ownership of the car. Every lie she had told came back to her like a tidal wave. Hours later, her parents burst into her messages, calling nonstop. When she finally picked up, their voices were frantic, not with concern for Lakin, but for Alara. "Lakin, you need to fix this," her mother pleaded. "Your sister is terrified. She said you misunderstood everything." Garrett added sharply, "If you hadn't pushed this so far, none of this would have happened." She panicked. "You should have protected her." But Lakin didn't respond with anger. She simply said she made her choices. "And so did you." Her parents kept talking, excuses, blame, twisting stories to make themselves look like bystanders instead of accomplices. But the truth was already documented. Officers had copies of texts, statements, and the recording where Alara called Lakin a walking wallet. Nothing her parents said could change what was already proven. Insurance finally reviewed the case again. With police confirmation and full evidence of unauthorized use, they approved her claim. Lakin received the payout for the totaled car and additional compensation for damages caused by the fraudulent details her family attempted to create. It felt like a piece of her life was being handed back to her, a piece she thought she'd lost forever. With the settlement money, Lakin made a decision she'd been holding in her chest for years. She rented a small apartment across town, signed the lease with steady hands, and moved out quietly. She packed her clothes, her documents, and the tiny reminders of her independence. She didn't take anything her family gave her. When she closed the door behind her, she finally breathed without feeling like the air was shared with people who didn't value her. A few days later, an envelope appeared in her mailbox with her sister's handwriting on the front. Inside was a short letter, messy and emotional. "You ruined everything. I hope you're happy." Lakin folded the note calmly and placed it in a drawer, not as a wound, but as a reminder. She didn't ruin anything. She simply stopped letting everyone else ruin her. Lakin stood in the dealership lot, the sun warming her face as she ran her hand across the hood of a brand-new silver sedan. It wasn't the same model she'd lost, it was better. Cleaner lines, stronger engine, safer features. But more than anything, it symbolized something she had never truly allowed herself to feel before: ownership of her own life. She signed the papers with steady, confident strokes. No second thoughts. No fear. Every document, every receipt, every spare key immediately went into a fireproof lockbox she kept in her new apartment. This time, no one else would touch what belonged to her. No one would have access to anything she worked for. Living alone felt unfamiliar at first. Quiet. Still. But in that stillness, she found something she had never had in her family's house: peace. She cooked her own meals, chose her own routines, and no one barged into her space demanding explanations or sacrifices. She slept without waiting for footsteps outside her door. She woke up without bracing for the next problem Alara would create. For the first time, her life was actually hers. A few weeks after settling in, Danny burst into her apartment holding her phone. "Lakin, have you seen the news?" Lakin shook her head. "Alara's case got processed. She didn't get jail time, but she's on probation. And," Danny paused, eyes widening, "she's been ordered to pay restitution. To you." Lakin didn't smile, but her shoulders lifted with a quiet relief. Restitution wasn't revenge. It was accountability, something Alara had never faced before. And it wasn't just her sister who felt the consequences. Their parents, who had spent years shielding Alara, suddenly realized they couldn't talk or manipulate her out of this. Soon after, the messages started coming. First a simple, "We should talk." Then longer ones filled with excuses and half-apologies. Finally, pleas layered with guilt. "We miss you. We're still a family. You can't cut us out forever." But Lakin didn't answer right away. She thought about everything she'd been through. The stolen car, the lies, the pressure to stay silent, the endless guilt she'd shouldered since childhood. She realized she didn't hate them. She was just done sacrificing herself for people who didn't protect her. So she replied with a single calm message. "I hope you're well, but I need distance. My peace isn't negotiable." That was the boundary she should have set years ago. And this time, she planned to honor it. Months later, after work, she grabbed her keys and headed to the parking lot. Her new car sat exactly where she left it, untouched, just as it should be. She slid into the driver's seat, exhaled deeply, and turned the engine on. The soft hum felt like a promise, steady, reliable, hers. As she pulled onto the open road, the sunset glowing across the sky, Lakin felt something she had never felt before: freedom without fear. She wasn't running away from her past. She was driving toward the life she chose for herself. Fully in control, finally unburdened, and completely her own. Do you think Lakin made the right choice by stepping away from the people who kept hurting her? Or should she have given her family another chance? Share your thoughts down below. I'm really curious to hear your take on it. And if stories like this resonate with you, remember to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.